Traffic out there was a little ugly on that. Like, really? This is the call to order of the Police Accountability Board meeting for Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. To access this meeting remotely, join from a PC, Mac, iPad, iPhone, or Android device using this URL listed below. If you do not wish for your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu and click on Rename to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. To join by phone, dial 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 826-5339-6072. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of this agenda, press *9 and wait to be recognized. Which brings us to our land acknowledgement. The city of Berkeley recognizes that the community we live in was built on the territory of the Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichinyo speaking Ohlone people, the ancestors and descendants of the Southern Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to all the Ohlone tribes and descendants of the Verona Band. As we begin our meeting tonight, we acknowledge and honor the original inhabitants of Berkeley, the documented 5,000-year history of a vibrant community at the West Berkeley Shell Mound, and the Ohlone people who continue to reside in the East Bay. We recognize that Berkeley's residents have and continue to benefit from the use and occupation of this unceded stolen land since the city of Berkeley's incorporation in 1878. As stewards of the laws regulating the city of Berkeley, it is not only vital that we recognize the history of this land, but also recognize that the Ohlone people are present members of Berkeley and other East Bay communities today. Which brings us to agenda item number 1, call to order.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:33 p.m. I will now proceed to roll call. Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Wilson notified us on just cause privilege that she will be in attendance tonight. Board Member Calavita. Board Member Lefkovich.
Here.
Board Member Blackby. Here. Board Member Cayetano is currently absent. Board Member Moses is currently absent. Chair, we have quorum.
Excellent. So that takes us to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there anything we'd like to change, add, restructure, remove? Not seeing or hearing any changes being implemented or asked. That will take us to agenda item number 3.
Chair, we just, sorry, could we get a move in a second, just for the purpose?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second. Thank you.
And that takes us to agenda item number 3, which is public comment.
Okay. We will now proceed to public comment. As a reminder, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but may be allotted less time. If there are many speakers, you may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction. I will start with those physically present before moving on to our virtual attendees. With that said, is there anybody who is physically present and would like to provide? Okay. No public comment from those physically attending. Okay. With that said, I'll now move on to our virtual attendees. Okay. At this time, is there anyone attending virtually who would like to provide public comment? Please use the raise hand icon to let us know if you'd like to provide public. Chair, at this time, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, so that would take us to agenda item number 4, approval of minutes for first, the minutes for the regular meeting on February 28th. Is there anything that we need to change, overlook? If not, I'm asking for a motion.
Move we accept minutes.
Second.
And that takes us to the minutes for the special meeting on March 2nd, 2024. Also, can we, for the record,
Yes.
so that Board Member Cayetano has made himself present, welcome. And okay, not seeing or hearing, can I get a motion for the special minutes, special meeting minutes for March 2nd, 2024?
Move approval of the special meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Which takes us to agenda item 5, training.
So for, board members, good evening, and, members of the public, at the retreat, that we were at, Saturday, I did, inform the board that our office was, looking at different assessment tools, and this came in also the discussion about, compliance and monitoring, police departments tools. So we were, doing some research on this and looked at, accreditation as a compliance and monitoring tool, in the packet. There is a memo. It has some research on this particular tool, for police, monitoring. And also there's another tool that's relatively new, it's called Sage. And all of the representatives are here today to talk a little bit about these tools. So we'd like to at this time provide the opportunity for the Representative Kalia, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Mr. Mark Sierra is present with us remotely, and we will allow him to speak to this today.
Well, good evening, members of the Police Accountability Board and members of the audience, either in person there or on the Zoom call. Good evening. My name is Mark Mosier, a Regional Program Manager for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies Incorporated, commonly referred to as CALEA. Prior to my working at CALEA, I am local. I worked at the City of Hayward Police Department from 1978 until March of 2013, retiring as a lieutenant. I was also Hayward PD's initial CALEA accreditation manager from 2007 until retiring at the conclusion of March 2013. I then assumed the position as regional program manager for CALEA 6 weeks later in May of 2013. So I am local to you here and actually visited the City of Berkeley Police Department some years ago when they initially were looking at accreditation. I do have a PowerPoint I would like to show at this time. It's just an informative PowerPoint. I did give this also to the director, and he could share it with anybody who asked to see it other than what I'm going to show tonight. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you could, Director, just let me know when you are seeing the PowerPoint on my screen.
We're seeing a PowerPoint.
Okay. Let me give you a little historical perspective on CALEA accreditation. It emerged as a solution to assist in the professional development of law enforcement back in 1979, so well over almost 45 years now, due to periods of civil unrest, and Berkeley was part of that back then. A lack of confidence in law enforcement, and that again is happening today as well. Desire to professionalize the vocation, and understanding the need of an independent authority with support from our founding organizations of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, formerly known as IACP, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, known as NOBLE, the National Sheriff's Association, NSA, and the Police Executive Research Forum, known as PERF. The CALEA accreditation process is a proven modern management model. Once implemented, it presents the Chief Executive Officer of the agency on a continuing basis with a blueprint that promotes the efficient use of resources and improves the service delivery, regardless of the size, geographic location, business model, or functional responsibilities of the agency. We started with our law enforcement program in 1979, and since then we've added 3 more programs into the fold. We have a communication center accreditation program. We have a training academy accreditation program, and our latest one is a campus security accreditation program. So we manage all 4 programs at this time. The accreditation programs provide public safety agencies an opportunity to voluntarily demonstrate that they meet an established set of professional standards. And when I mean voluntary, it's not, we don't want any agencies being mandated to join up with CALEA. It's not the best fit if somebody's told to do something and they're going into it begrudgingly. So we ask that agencies voluntarily enroll to demonstrate transparency and best practices in public safety. CALEA's purpose is to establish a body of professional standards and an accreditation process that requires the agency to develop a comprehensive set of written directives, provide the necessary reports and analyses that the CEO needs to make fact-based, informed management decisions, requires a preparedness program be put in place, or the means for developing or improving upon relationships with the community. It strengthens an agency's accountability both within the agency and within the community. And it can limit an agency's liability and risk exposure and facilitates an agency's pursuit of professional excellence. Our structure is that we maintain 21 commissioners that are appointed by our founding organizations. They serve in a 3-year term and could opt to stay for 3 different terms, a total of 9 years, if they want to. Commissioners come from a broad range of public safety professionals, private sector, public sector, academic industries. We have judges, so forth on our board of commissioners. CALEA operates as an independent, nonprofit 501c3 corporation, maintains a professional staff managed by an executive director. I am one of those regional programs managers, and there are a total of 8 all across the country and Latin America. The staff conducts all administrative and operational duties as directed by the commission. So we have clients in the United States of America, we have clients in Canada, Latin America, and Barbados at this time. We are also currently looking at a training academy in Morocco and vetting that right now. We have roughly 1,100 client agencies with a 95% retention rate. So when they sign up, they usually stay. We have clients that are 40 years plus in CALEA organization, and many more joining currently. Clients include a wide variety of public safety agencies, including federal agencies in the US and Mexico, state agencies, transit, airport, port authority, campus security, nuclear agencies, city and county, all different sizes from small to large in our programs. We're getting a lot of regional communication centers across the country now too. Our law enforcement program, which is something Berkeley may want to look at. We have 2 different law enforcement accreditation programs. We have a basic program of 183 standards. Those 183 standards are all mandatory health, life, and safety standards. And then we maintain an advanced accreditation program of 461 standards. That includes all 183 mandatory health, life, and safety standards, and then many other standards that are handled by larger law enforcement public safety agencies, up and above the basic health, life, and safety ones. And the agency that joins up with CALEA in our law enforcement program can pick either of those 2. Initially, they could advance to a higher one if they start with the basic, or they can drop down from advanced to the basic if they need to at that point. Our eligibility is for legally constituted mandated responsibility agencies to enforce laws. So we look and see if it's a real law enforcement public safety agency that wants to join up and not a security agency kind of thing. Our initial agreement is for 36 months, meaning that if an agency signs up with CALEA today, they have up to 36 months to review those eligible standards that are in the program that they chose and to come into compliance with those standards as appropriate. CALEA maintains a standards review and interpretation committee. We call it SRIC. It's contained of 11 commissioners out of the 21, and they are all subject matter experts in the field of public safety. We allow input from our clients when we are looking at either adopting new standards or revising existing standards in our programs. We apply the best practices from professional practitioners, and we strive to maintain a contemporary source for clients. So we're always reviewing all of our standards and all of our programs on a continual basis. In our law enforcement program, we look at those 3 times a year and update as appropriate. And if new technology comes out, we look at new standards regarding that new technology, like body-worn cameras, as an example. And then again, if there's a standard that we have and it ends up being obsolete for one reason or another, we sometimes remove those standards due to being obsolete. So we're always looking at our standards constantly. Here is the process in a nutshell. An agency that's looking at us wants to enroll. They do the enrollment, and then they start a self-assessment process, which could take up to 3 years or longer, depending on how fast the agency can review those standards and come into compliance with those. During that time, they're developing or amending existing policies, procedures, and practices. They start documenting data and putting together data tables for what they may not have had data tables for initially. When they get done and are in compliance with all those applicable standards in that program that they signed up for, we will conduct an initial assessment when they are ready. And once we conduct that initial assessment, we will write a comprehensive report, which will then go to our commission for review. And at one of our 3 conferences a year, we will conduct an agency award hearing. And if it is approved by the commission for the agency to be accredited, we make those motions as appropriate. And then once an agency gets initially accredited, the hard part comes to where they have to maintain that process forevermore while they're in CALEA. And then every 4 years, they are subject to reaccreditation and so on in perpetuity. The self-assessment process, just a very short overview, is that once they enroll, they have up to 36 months to come into compliance with those standards in the program that they chose. And once they're ready, we will come and physically look at their standards folders to make sure that their written directives, procedures, and practices are compliant with those standards. And once we look at those files over the web, we will then send in to the agency CALEA trained assessors to actually be there on site with the agency for several days to observe the agency, their practices, interviews internally, externally, review their operations, make a comprehensive report, and submit it to the commission for final determination for accredited status. And at the conference, the agency will go to this hearing. The commission will ask questions of the agency regarding that assessment report and then make a determination on accredited status. And once they get accredited, and not all agencies do get accredited, it is not a cookie cutter agency that we have where you're going to get it. They have to show it. And once you get accredited, you are accredited for a 4-year period, but you'll still be doing maintaining your compliance and reaccreditation status on a yearly basis. We will look at your standards folders every year after getting accredited, making sure that you're maintaining those standards and that you're in compliance with them at all times, showing us proofs of compliance that you actually do. Is somebody trying to ask a question or talking over me? I'm getting some feedback right now. Nope, you're okay? Everybody can hear me? Okay. So to retain their accredited status, the agency is required also to submit CALEA a annual status report and continuation fees to maintain in the program. So like I said, we have over 1,100 agencies so far in CALEA. That's like the top 3% of agencies voluntarily wanting to show that their agency is doing the best in public safety practices. Our remote web-based assessment, again, it's yearly. We have client service members that are looking at these agencies every year, sometimes even more than every year, every twice a year kind of thing. So we're always making sure our agencies are keeping current with the standards in the applicable program or programs that they are in, and making sure that they're doing things for the right reasons, not just for CALEA. Here is a 4-year accreditation cycle on what it looks like. Starting at the 12 o'clock position, that's where they would normally sign up, and you go in a clockwise direction. And once they get accredited, this is the process in a clockwise direction that an agency does with CALEA every single year. So getting accredited is hard, but maintaining accreditation is sometimes the harder part. Mediocrity sometimes gets in the way of agencies as they just do their policing or public safety stuff. And CALEA is there to make sure that even though you're busy at your agency, you're keeping up with our standards, which are keeping up with the contemporary factors of public safety in the world as we see it now. So CALEA is your last stopgap to keep you going, even when you're busy and you're not doing other stuff. CALEA is making sure that your agency stays constant and current. Benefits of CALEA. Well, greater accountability within the agency. Our standards give the CEO a proven management system of written directives, sound training, and clearly defined lines of authority and routine reports that support decision-making and resource allocation. Some agencies get so busy they don't end up getting to do those things, and then the CEO doesn't know what needs to be changed, and that just it turns out being negative. CALEA, that isn't allowed to happen. Reduced risk and liability exposure because your policies and procedures are always remaining up to date and contemporary. Therefore, you're not getting stale, and your policies and procedures are not last amended or revised or adopted since 1983 kind of stuff. We make sure they are looked at yearly and that they are current and contemporary. Stronger defense in civil lawsuits. This is a big one. A lot of our agencies see that they are able to defend themselves better because of their policies and procedures being kept current, that they have the training records and they could show them, because we at CALEA look at those to make sure that they're maintaining those. So yeah, they're saving a lot on litigation, and sometimes they are not even added to lawsuits because of the CALEA accreditation. And you could show that you have all the documents and stuff to support that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And staunch support from government officials. Our accreditation process provides objective evidence of an agency's commitment to excellence in leadership resource management, and service delivery. And lastly, increased community advocacy. Our accreditation programs embodies the precepts of community-oriented policing. We looked at, and actually a lot of our standards were formulated before the 21st century policing model came out several years ago. And so we've actually always been ahead of the curve from things happening in public safety in the last 5 or 7 years. So our standards, we adopted a lot of those chokeholds and stuff like that well before these were just coming out in the press. Return on investment. This is a big thing for City Berkeley, and your group here provides a management model for law enforcement administration and operations. It produces better trained public safety personnel as a result of our standards and what the agency has to do to comply with them. It can limit an agency's liability and risk exposure. I just talked about that. Promotes greater accountability within the agency. Demonstrates verification of best practices. And accreditation can be used in other ways to achieve agency objectives like agency audits, device for organizational change, to see how to, move around manpower to better affect, reduction of crimes, etc., employee involvement strategies. That's it for the PowerPoint. I'd like to entertain any questions that any of the members have for me tonight. You got to have something for me here.
I just asked, this is Brent Black, what's the typical cost for the accreditation, both to CALEA as well as what an agency has to do for compliance?
Yeah, sure. Let me just actually get back to my screen, if that's okay. And I'm actually going to get out of this PowerPoint. And it's available for anybody to see here. There we go. Hold on. I'm not getting out. My screen has locked up. Roughly for an agency the size of Berkeley, it is around $16,000 for an agency to sign up in our law enforcement program. It depends on the size of the agency. Smaller agencies pay a little less, larger agencies pay a little bit more, but roughly the cost is about $12,000 for the smallest of agencies to roughly about $16,000. That is to get the agency to the point of their initial assessment process. When they're ready to have their initial assessment, we will invoice the agency roughly $5,000 for that initial assessment to be done. It's probably going to be less than $5,000 because we send people out to the agency. And then after an agency gets accredited for a size of Berkeley PD, I'm going to say roughly about $6,100 per year to maintain that and keep going in accreditation. But let me get to I'm actually going to the website. It is roughly, I'll give you the exact cost. I'm logging into it right now. You can't see it on your screen, but Berkeley is $16,125 to get to that point of the initial assessment, roughly $5,000. So that makes it around $21,000. Once you get accredited, their annual continuation fee would be only $5,000 a year to maintain it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Hi, this is Josh Kaitanen. What is CALEA's relationship, if any, at all, with Lexipol? Because I know that Lexipol provides standardized policies for departments, and Berkeley Police Department has taken to converting all of their policies to Lexipol. So I'm curious what the overlap is with that.
Well, that's a very good question, Josh. And you're going to probably be surprised that when I was at Hayward, I was a lieutenant, and I was in charge of swapping our current policy manual to the brand new Lexipol policy manual back in 2007. So Lexipol was a company put together by several lawyers in California to make a generic policy manual for law enforcement agencies starting in California. Lexipol has since grown to just start merging into all the other states across this country. But what Lexipol is, it's a company that makes generic policy manuals for a state. And when an agency contracts with Lexipol to get their own policy manual from Lexipol, Lexipol gives them a generic policy manual for the state of California, and the agency then enters in their agency specific content up and above what Lexipol has put in there. Lexipol is very good. I like Lexipol, but Lexipol is a for-profit policy manual company, and CALEA is a nonprofit accreditation body, and we're like fruits and vegetables. We're different, but we can work well together, and we do. So Lexipol, when an agency subscribes or contracts with Lexipol, they put their agency controlled content into a generic policy manual, making it like Berkeley PD now. And then Berkeley PD, if they were to contract with CALEA, they would add in the CALEA related content for our standards into the Lexipol mainframe. So it's a little extra work in adding the CALEA standards into the Lexipol policy manual, but I love the look and feel of how Lexipol has that policy manual. Lexipol maintains all federal and state changes to statutes and so forth. The city adds in any updated local related statutes, but then the agency would also maintain the CALEA related content that would go into that Lexipol policy. Does that make sense, Josh?
Makes sense. So just a follow-up question, is there a substantive difference between the policies that Lexipol maintains and the standards that CALEA holds departments to? Because I'm thinking like, I mean, maybe to put the question a different way, would Lexipol, if it were an agency, fit CALEA's accreditation standards? Is that
Yeah, so
insofar?
we had met with Lexipol trying to see if we can sort of have a collaborative working arrangement together. And there was Lexipol, because they're a for-profit company, would have had would have gained everything out of that relationship. And CALEA wouldn't gain anything out of it because our clients are voluntary, and whatever Lexipol got to put in and keep, is just we at CALEA wouldn't be able to do anything with that. So it's like, we just don't play together nicely in the sandbox. But what Lexipol has doesn't meet in many of the policies, doesn't meet what CALEA is looking at for our standards compliance. And Lexipol only does like bi-yearly updates unless they have an emergency push on some federal or state statute that they want to alert their client agencies of. But CALEA, we maintain our policy manuals, up to 3 times a year. So we're always pushing out updates way past what Lexipol does, and Lexipol can't keep up with what changes are being made in our standards. So yeah, it works really good when agencies contract with both and they maintain both. Like Hayward, probably we have 22 accredited agencies in California right now. I would say that about 15 of those 22 are CALEA and Lexipol clients, and they just enter the information to maintain both within Lexipol's KMS system.
one more follow-up question. Thank you for answering those. That was a helpful context. So one of our jobs, as the Police Accountability Board, is to also review, Berkeley Police Department's policies and to offer revisions. So I'm curious what Kalia does in jurisdictions where there is an oversight body that has similar responsibilities, because I can see how they are comparable, so in a way, but I also think that, you'd be doing a lot of the work that we're also doing at the same time. So I'm curious how you've been navigating that in any jurisdiction.
Well, we understand that some jurisdictions have police accountability boards or something of a different title. And some agencies don't. We at Kalia don't get involved in those. Your body is basically separate than our accrediting body. But I think that what you would like to see is a lot of what we are doing. When you're looking at a agency's policy manual or procedure manual and stuff, I believe you're going to find that with an accredited agency, you're always going to probably see better content, and more clear content than what you may be seeing at a non-accredited agency. But we at Kalia, we don't get in the mix of whether an agency has an accountability board or a police commission or not. They're separate and from what we do. So you do your thing, we do our thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm Katie Calavita. Thank you for your presentation. One of the listed purposes is to strengthen accountability within the community. How do you do that?
Well, we have a whole chapter on community policing that strives for agencies to come into compliance with those applicable standards in community policing. And so we're always looking at if an agent is proactively working community policing or not. And, they have to comply with those applicable standards that are mandatory in community policing in this day and age. If you're not practicing that, bad things happen. So we really take a high emphasis on reviewing those agencies and their applicability to the standards relating to community policing and so forth.
Thank you. And could you tell us you said 22 cities across California, which cities in Northern California are accredited through Kalia? You mentioned Hayward. What else?
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly here. I'm actually logging in right now to get those. All 22, and some of them are right near you. Bringing it up right now. The system is slow to pop up. Okay, so right now we have 4 agencies in self-assessment. Those are Anaheim, Hanford, which is in Central Valley, Cal State University Channel Islands in Southern California, and most recently in the Central Bay Area is Stanislaus Regional 911 Comm Center. But the 22 accredited agencies are the Alameda County Sheriff's Office, and they're in all 3 programs, Law Enforcement, Communications Center, and Training Academy. We have the California Highway Patrol, same thing, Law Enforcement, Training Academy, Communications Center. We have Oakland Housing Authority, which is very close to you. They are in the law enforcement program. We got Hayward. We got Bay Area Rapid Transit. That's accredited. That's right near you as well. And then down south, we got Pismo Beach. They are in law enforcement and communications center. We got Burbank, Buena Park, Garden Grove, Hermosa Beach. We got Pacific Grove near Monterey. Tustin, West Sacramento, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State LA, University of California, San Francisco, Oakland Housing Authority has law enforcement and comm center, I should add. And yeah, so that ends up being 22 different programs. When I started in CALIA in 2007, there was only 7 agencies in California. If you look back east, most of our CALIA agencies started on the East Coast, and they're saturated back east. But now the Western states are starting to see the value of accreditation in the West Coast and are starting to join up. I'm getting about 5 to 7 enrollments every year right now, just in California alone.
Please, right?
Thank you, Mr. Moulton. This is Hansel Ibar. And I was a little interested in, if you have any, research or anything regarding the 5% that you were unable to retain. I saw on the slides at 95% retention rate. Is my understanding, but I don't know the full fact, and you have the percent. But at some point, I understood, Berkeley was CALIA accredited, but I don't know if the history is there, but what have you seen as to why agencies, what about that percent, why they?
You were cutting out a little bit, but I think I got most of what you were saying. I was contacted by Berkeley PD roughly 2015, and I actually went to the PD and talked to a representative there, talked about CALIA. They never joined up with CALIA. They just took the information, but they ultimately did not enroll in the CALIA process. So, and I don't know what the reasoning was on why they didn't. You know, I am not a salesman. I provide the information. If an agency wants it, I'm more than happy to work with them and so forth. But ultimately, Berkeley at that time, it just didn't work.
Okay, but my question, sir, was what about that 5% that CALIA hasn't been able to retain? What happens to those agencies? Is there a reason that you're seeing why some agencies become accredited and then leave?
There are some agencies that sign up with CALIA for various reasons. You know, it's many different reasons. Some are because, you know, city manager or mayor or some council is pushing to have the agency do that. But it really depends on the agency's CEO and his or her vision to whether if they sign up that they're going to be successful in this process. Signing up for CALIA is like putting another initiative on a strategic plan. You need to follow and commit to what you put on your strategic plan. And to be successful, you got to maintain that the objective within that strategic plan and follow it through to conclusion. Some agencies, CEOs want the matted certificate on the wall, but they don't want to do the work in furtherance of getting that certificate. Sometimes there is an administrative change midstream where agencies are in CALIA and a new CEO comes on board and he or she doesn't want to do that because he or she doesn't want to do what the previous CEO was doing and they you know withdraw out of the program. So there's a myriad of reasons why an agency may fall short, but in most cases it is just a lack of wherewithal and follow through. That is that you know they don't see it as an objective on their strategic plan and they don't just follow it through. And this is what I tell agencies before they even sign up. If this is something that you're going to not follow up through and waste money on, then you know really you don't need to sign up, and you shouldn't sign up for the program unless you see the vision that you want to make sure that your agency does the right things for the right reason, that you're transparent to your community and your staff at the police department. And if you don't want that, then really we don't want you in our program either. So it's really dependent on the CEO and his or her vision, and then follow through to maintain it. Did that answer your question? That was sort of, I'm getting a lot of background.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sir, anybody else would like to pose a question? If not, I'll let you guys close. And with my thank you as well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we're gonna move to the next segment of this training. With us is Dr. Wong. She is with the at California State University, Long Beach. She's a criminology professor there. He did present at the past May conference about this new assessment tool at an NYU School of Law recent project. It's called SAGE, Sound, Accountable, Just, and Effective Leasing Assessment. We did give a little preview of it in the memo we wrote, but we have invited her so she can tell us more about this tool and how it's been used. So if you want to have this. Dr. Wong?
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Wonderful. All right, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm going to do a short little presentation, but hopefully we'll have a lot of time at the end to ask any questions. So I'm going to share my screen. And please do let me know if you're seeing the slides advance. Either sometimes they get stuck. So I'm here tonight on two different roles. One, I am, as was mentioned already, a professor of criminal justice and criminology at Cal State University, Long Beach. I've been there for 18 years, and all of my research has been doing research with and for the police and doing a lot of evaluation of technology and policies and policing initiatives, including crime analysis and community engagement. But I'm also a research associate, a senior research fellow for the NYU Policing Project. Did everyone see the slide advance? Yes, great. Okay, thank you. For the NYU Policing Project, and the Policing Project has been around for about a decade now, a little under a decade, and it really strives to improve community engagement in policing and to improve policing in this country in a number of different areas. What I'm going to present to you about today is the SAGE policing assessment. We're new on the block. We certainly haven't been around as long as CALEA, but we do think we fill an important gap. So after, we've had a decade and longer of police of strife and critical incidents in this country. And after the incidents of 2020 and the death of George Floyd, we were seeing a lot of police departments struggling and a lot of communities struggling, city managers and mayors struggling with the question of whether their police departments are doing a good job or not. So we asked police departments across the country at the Policing Project, we asked mayors, we asked accountability boards, how do you know if you're doing a good job? How do you know if your police department is doing a good job? And the answer that came back more often than not was we don't. And we wanted to fill that gap to be able to give police departments, give accountability boards, mayor's offices, communities a tool they could use to be able to assess their police departments. And that's needed because in this country, and I'm sure it's no mystery to you, there's no national standards for policing, no baselines or benchmarks on police performance. And there's really competing and conflicting ideas of what police should do for communities because communities are so different. So what we thought we'd do, and it's a monumental task, is try to define metrics that make a good quality police department, then determine how to measure those metrics, and then report and score on those metrics in a very transparent way. We want to keep everything that we're doing completely transparent. Our metrics are open. We don't have any proprietary nature on these. And we've tried to, in the last 3 years since we've been doing SAGE, 3 or 4 years, to adapt them with the changing landscape, but also work with different communities because, as we know, as I mentioned, different communities have different requirements and expectations of their police department. So first, how did we define what a quality police department was? A safe, accountable, just, and effective police department. Well, we brought together, and this was a 2-year process. It was really painstaking. Active and retired police chiefs, community organizers, directors and participants of oversight bodies, government sector practitioners, management, strategy consultants, private foundation leaders, professors and researchers in criminal justice, law, public affairs, and technology and business experts. And we asked them in a series of focus groups and meetings and retreats what quality policing was and what they expected to see a good police department doing. And we really came up with the 6 themes of what all of these different stakeholders thought a good police department should do. First, they should rest on a foundation of racial equity. They should respect their community members' civil liberties. Their policy, procedure, their actions should be based and should take into account constitutional law. They should understand constitutional law and abide by it. They should proceed with evidence-based practices when appropriate. So to really go into the research and understand that there are things that have been shown to work. Conversely, there have been things that have shown not to work. And a quality police department should understand the difference, but they should also engage in evaluation so that they can build the evidence body for police departments. Democratic accountability is important in a quality police department, and ultimately, keeping communities safe is of paramount importance as well. So under each of these themes, we then had, again, the painstaking process of trying to whittle it down to ways to measure these things. And it's not easy. We figured out we've sort of organized these metrics or these ways of measuring quality policing into 4 different pillars. And that makes up the acronym SAGE: sound, accountable, just, and effective policing. And we broke it down into 15 categories that our metrics fall under. Recruitment and retention, which is incredibly important right now. Training and officer preparedness, how can we measure that in a police department? Personnel safety and well-being. Internal operations and culture. Are your resources efficient? Do you have enough to actually make a difference and to do the things that you want to do as a police department? Transparency and data. Are you collecting the data that you should be collecting? But more importantly, perhaps, is are you being transparent with it? Do you have data dashboards where community members, oversight bodies can access that data and assess your service? Democratic governance and accountability, officer accountability and discipline, use of force, stop searches and seizures, First Amendment policies, investigative procedures, community engagement in policing. And this was really important to us. Again, we engaged with a lot of community members, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we did an in-depth community engagement set of sessions in 2 different cities. Other police responses, and individuals in crisis and susceptible to victimization and abuse. So these are the 15 categories that all of our metrics fall under. And we came out with what we think is a very usable tool of 100 metrics that we think measures good policing. And that's a little bit of a misnomer. It's 100 metrics, but some of those metrics have subcomponents. For instance, when you're looking at a use of force policy, which is one of our metrics, there's 8 different subcomponents of what we think should be in a good use of force policy. Talking about our metrics again, about 35% of them are directly related to policy and procedure, what we think policy should state and what procedures should happen in order to meet these standards. About 20% of our metrics deal with training. We'd like to look at curriculum and make sure that the training isn't just there in name, but they're actually doing what the training was meant to do. Data. So again, looking at the data that is collected, how transparent it is, that's about 15% of our metrics. And then there's another 30% that's really a bunch of different things. And this can fall under your community accountability. How accessible are you in the police department to community input, engagement, and how much do you actually seek input of your community, especially specific types or specific portions of the community that may be more highly impacted by policing services. What we've tried to do, and again, none of this is easy, but we've tried to have 5 different guiding principles in the way that we conduct SAGE. And again, we're new, we're adapting, we're learning with each site that we visit. We're trying to be very comprehensive and prioritize aspects of policing in the community that historically have not been consistently measured. So many police departments rely on the standard measures of quality, clearance rates, response times, crime rates, but we're really trying to break free or at least expand on those and prioritize policing in the community and their interaction. We think it's incredibly important, especially now when police departments are strapped for person power and time, to be feasible, very user-friendly and accessible. We're doing everything we can from our end to try to take the burden off of police departments and auditing offices or accountability boards and try to do some of what can be done on our end ourselves. So for instance, we can look through public facing information and make sure if one of the questions is your strategic plan online, we can check that out. And we can do that work ourselves. Going through the policy and procedure document, we can go through those ourselves so that the police department isn't burdened in that workload. We have to have a reasonable rigor because we are meant to improve and advance police services, but we don't think our tool would be good if absolutely everyone failed, if everyone is getting an incredibly low score. We think it's important to celebrate what police departments are doing well, while still holding them accountable and identifying for the department themselves, for mayor's offices and the community, what they could improve upon. We're very adaptable. You know this, there's no community that's the same. We have minimum requirements that we think police departments should live up to. However, we do understand that different communities want different things from their police department. Different police departments think that they will serve their community better by doing different things. So 100% on this tool is not the goal. However, we do want to point out what a department is not doing and allow them and their community and their guiding boards to decide whether they would like to move in the direction of actually getting or doing those metrics. And finally, accessible. And this is huge for us. We want to be completely transparent. We want to give communities access to agency results right away. So we don't hold this, it really is different than accreditation where you meet accreditation or you don't. That's not what this assessment is. Rather, we determine whether a police department is doing a number of things, and then we share that with the police department, but also with the community and with the governing bodies. And we renew, again, we're only in about 6 or 7 agencies right now, but it is the goal, and we have funding from Microsoft. They're already building this to have a public-facing dashboard, essentially, where community members and individuals can go to the site. They can see what their departments have scored on, and they can compare it with other departments of the same size, with other departments that might have similar demographics or crime issues, but also of other departments in the same region, perhaps. This is a goal. We're not there yet, but it is an ultimate goal and a very important one to us, that transparency. Who can use SAGE? We see the possible uses as being huge and multifaceted. Obviously, police leaders. If you are a new chief coming into a department, we think an assessment like SAGE would be really, really useful if you are considering putting a new strategic plan together. Communities can use it again just to judge whether their police department is doing a good job compared to other police departments in the country and the region or in cities of similar size. Policymakers, oversight bodies. Right now, we're working with the Office of the Auditor in the District of Columbia to do the SAGE assessment with the DC Metropolitan Police Department. So we're working directly with the oversight body there. But in our other sites, we're working directly with the police department. So we are nimble with who we've worked with, who's called us in. We do like it is obviously voluntary to do it, but when we work with oversight bodies, it's used as an assessment, not an audit tool, but it really helps these oversight bodies focus in on what they might want to dig into a little bit more in a more exhaustive audit. City leaders, again, for that assessment. And finally, and perhaps, obviously very importantly, researchers, because we do see this as once it spreads, again, the results are going to be public facing, they're going to be available. And then researchers can look in and say, okay, each of these metrics, each of these questions is a variable. And they can look and see what metrics are really leading towards change in specific outcomes. So we hope to, with this tool, increase the evidence base of policing in this country. Our process is about 3 to 4 months long, so we're very quick. We pride ourselves on that. We want to be in and out. We want to give the police department and cities, communities a tool that they can use very quickly. The department self-scores, first of all, we have a web base. I'll show you that in a minute. Again, with funding we've had funding for this project from Microsoft and from the Joyce Foundation. Right now, we're running on a lot of grants as well. The department self-scores and uploads evidence to say whether they do something, one of our metrics or not. Also, from our end, you take some of the burden off if the police department doesn't want. Some police departments want to do everything, others just don't have the person power to do so. So we take on a lot of the review of policies at that point, or public-facing documents. So we help along the way at this first stage. Then it goes to our preliminary external scoring, and this is from a independent evaluator. So right now we have 4 different academics, social scientists that are doing this preliminary external scoring. And just because academics tend to understand evidence, we use them. We do, as our base grows, we thought about expanding that to different individuals, different roles as well. Then it goes back to the department and they do another review of their scoring, because quite often, more often than not, the evaluator has seen things where the department says, yes, we're doing that, but the evidence is not sufficient. So the evaluator goes back and asks for more evidence. Then it goes finally back to the evaluator where there's an external scoring. They will decide once and for all whether the evidence provided meets that the standard for that metric, getting a point for that metric. And then we produce what we think is a pretty usable final report for the community, for the city, for whoever has asked us to do this tool, where we once again will celebrate what the police department is doing well, and we'll identify where we think the police department could focus if they want to improve in certain areas. And that final report is it's got the same segments, so the same sections of the categories that I talked about before. So there'll be a section on the retention, there will be a section on community engagement, and just how the police department scores in those areas. This is our web tools. It's very easy. Police departments, they can log in. They can, the one person that could be controlling this can assign different questions to different individuals in the police department. And there's a communication sort of aspect to this too, where they can put, I'm not quite understanding this question, or how does this piece of evidence look? And our evaluators can go in right away and react to that. The reason that we're trying to make this very feasible and easy is we want the process to be quick. And because we do think that getting this tool and getting this information in a timely way is important. So again, the time that it takes, so the time of commitment for SAGE is about between 3 to 4 months. It's taken a little less and it's taken a little more. Resources, how much resource does it burden the police department with? We are certainly less than CLIA or other state accreditation, just because we can't exactly compare our metrics with accreditation bodies because they don't tend to be public, their metrics. Ours are, however, but our SAGE staff can assist with reviewing policies and public facing evidence. And we think this takes about 30% of the burden off police departments. The cost, renew, almost everyone that's had us come in so far has gotten either grant funding or we've found funding to do it. It really depends on the size of the agency and travel requirements. We've certainly written grants for departments in order to get this. One of our smaller agencies, Bellevue, Nebraska, we wrote a TOPS micro grant for them, and they got a significant amount of money, not only for us to come in, but to help because they're a small department, to help them find overtime or hire someone to get the information that we needed. We've also applied, I'll talk about grants in a moment, for something like Berkeley, somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, depending on the travel requirements. However, we'd certainly be willing to work with the PD in writing grants if that was not possible. So where are we right now? Our current activities, our pilot with Tucson PD, which was our very first department, has completed. I led that pilot and it was very successful. In fact, the chief, Chad Kasmar, has invited us back next year. We ideally, sage policing should be done we're in and out, and there is no requirement for you to do the assessment again. However, if you want to, as a department, show the progress you've made, or if an oversight body or community wants to see the progress that a PD has made, then they can invite us back. We suggest no earlier than about 16 months, though, just to allow the police department to have time to focus in and improve on a lot of these of the areas where improvement was noted. We're in progress with 5 additional sites. Bellevue, Nebraska. Again, I mentioned we got a COPS grant for them. Las Vegas, Nevada, we applied for and received a Smart Policing Initiative grant. So we're working with them for 3 years. And this is, again, our commitment to increasing the evidence base. We want to test what we're doing here. We're doing a in-depth process and impact evaluation with Las Vegas to see how this is working and are we impacting some of the outcomes that we say. We're doing community engagement surveys. We're looking at crime stats. We are doing, again, a process evaluation where we're interviewing the city, the police department, and community members, trying to talk to them about the challenges and successes of implementing SAGE in the city. Seattle, Washington, Tampa, Florida, and Washington, D.C. Again, the unique thing with Washington, D.C. is that we're working through the auditor's office. And in fact, in Tampa, we got in through the mayor, Jane Castor in Tampa, invited us in invited us to meet with the chief, and the chief wanted SAGE done as well. So we've been introduced to the police departments through a number of different avenues. And that, in a nutshell, is SAGE. So I will open it up for any questions people might have.
Would anyone like to ask the question?
Sure.
Please.
Hi, Brent Blackaby. I have a question about the metrics on slide 9, and I'll just note this is been sort of the ratio, kind of the balancing between weighting metrics towards what the policies are versus data that's collected about compliance against the policies. It's something I think we wrestle with a lot as a board. It's one thing to vet the policy and make sure that policy meets community standards. It's another thing to determine how well is the department doing at adhering to the policy. Just curious, as you guys think about the relative weighting of the metrics and that sort of trade-off. You know, I know it's a work in progress in terms of how you're coming up with the formula, but I would love just to hear your thoughts on that kind of discussion.
That's a really great question. And again, we are looking at, with the policy questions and procedure questions, we're looking at the language to make sure that there are things in the policy. We are not measuring whether those policies are being adhered to. So that would be something that a board like yours might want to focus on, or a department might want to focus on to make sure that those policies are being adhered to. We are just looking to see whether those policies have language. At the moment, we're not weighting anything. However, there are certain questions that have more components to them, like use of force, stop searches and seizures. Those tend to be more heavily weighted than others. But in time, there could be a weighting. We just haven't started doing anything like that. It's a little early at this point, but great question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Mr. Chair, and Dr. Ball, just have to do something procedural. One of our board members logged in during the presentation, so I just want to, for the record, state that board member Moses is participating under just all provisions. Board member Moses, can you please just certify that you are participating remotely, and rough estimate at what time you joined our meeting?
Yes, hi everybody. I apologize for being forced to join remotely and late no less. I didn't get relief from my wife with a sick child in time to make the start of the meeting. I did have a question around the extent of external and objective data that you gather and how you are can you differentiate between some of the subjective versus objective evaluations that you're doing to come to some of the conclusions that you share?
Sure, yeah, and I think I understand what you're asking. So when we collect evidence, there's some things that are subjective. So we try to keep it as objective as we possibly can. For instance, policy procedure language, that's easy, right? Is it there? Is it not? However, when we're looking at whether impacted portions of the community are engaged with, we try to ask our questions in very definite ways. So do you hold community meetings in neutral places? How do you identify those places? Do you have policies and do you have a procedure document that sort of guides you in where you're holding public meetings, how you're collecting information from communities? Do you have, not just do you have a list, but do you use a list of referral agencies, for instance, if you're referring individuals, high needs individuals to community agencies, to social services? Do you keep that list, but also do you keep track of how often you are being referred to those agencies? So in those very subjective categories, we're trying to use objective measures as much as we can.
But the majority of the input data is through surveys of both the department and the community, is that right?
Correct. The input data is all from the department.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's your hand, Billy. I'd like to say thank you for your time and for the very educational presentation. Really did enjoy it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay. So that brings our agenda to item number 6, which is the RDP staff report.
We're coming in at an unusual time, Chair, Board, so I just want to make sure that we're acknowledging, we do have some staff members present from the city. We have Deputy City Attorney James Chang is joining us remotely. We do have representatives from the City Manager's Office, Mr. Rex Brown and Dr. Arredondo present with us here today. ODPA, we have Mr. Senguillo and our investigator, Keegan Portman. We did have at one point for other investigators. Yes, our investigator, Jason Wex, is also joining us remotely. Board members, this is our last meeting. Just want to give you an update. I know at the retreat you expressed interest in getting the annual report out to the public. We had anticipated bringing it to you at this meeting. Unfortunately, I didn't build in when I at the retreat. I didn't build in the attorney review, so that is in process, and we're going to striving to get it to you for the next meeting. They have graciously agreed to an expedited review to make sure that we can get it to you in timely manner. As you may be aware, the police department presented their annual report last night. So I know there's interest on public safety matters, and certainly within our report, that will be the first time that it will be going before council. I wanted to, I don't have any other specific updates, but before I take any questions, I did want to yield to our colleagues at the city manager's office to see if they had any updates for us.
Yeah, happy to update the team that we are making good progress with our gun violence intervention and prevention program. Request for proposal is expected to publish very soon. And we're just looking forward to continued partnership with the Police Accountability Board and next steps in the interview, review, and selection process. And I want to see if my colleague Rex has any updates as well.
We're making good progress. Thank you so much, Carrie Ann. We're making great progress, really interacting with the community, new engagement, and hiring our first assistant, which is our major piece of work and commitment for the division. So just building the division out, and really grateful for all of your help and assistance, and all of the incredible work that you all are doing here. I probably have a few questions that I'll ask offline regarding the presentations today. But just really grateful to be here. And again, thank you, Carrie Anna, for all the work that I see Carrie Anna everywhere, because somewhere she's in the mix. So I'm just really grateful to her, and thank you for all of your assistance there as well. So back to you, Hansel.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't have any other updates, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Wondered if you had an update about when we can expect to have a closed session with the labor negotiator and the city attorney regarding the status of the permanent regs.
Sure. So we did have, anticipating full session for tonight. With the labor negotiators, there has been an update. There is a new negotiator that to be represented the city in this process. The chair and myself had the opportunity meeting in the morning today to discuss next steps. We have informed them that the board is anxiously waiting for this process to continue. They're trying to get caught up to speed to see when they can come to the meeting. They informed that they were supposed to be scheduled tonight, and I'm going to follow back up to see if they can come back at the next meeting. But I'll also refer to the chair.
Well, that is exactly what I was gonna report on, so everybody knew that our labor negotiator we've been working with in the past is gonna leave of his duties. There is a new team that has been brought on, as well as the Human Resources Office of the city, in collaboration with a few other stakeholders, are taking over this process now. And we are not starting at the beginning. We are going to start with the work that has already been done by our past representation and Deputy Attorney Chang. And from that point on, we're going to, I believe we'll be in a reassessment mode as we start renegotiations with our new team. So, yes, if you have any questions for me about this, then I can answer it session. Please feel free. I know it's a lot to take in. But yeah, we are preparing a new process to get our regs through.
In the city attorney office, I don't know if you have additional comments regarding that you can provide for public at this time.
Nothing additional. I think you guys have covered it well. There is a new labor negotiation team in place. Part of the intention is to kind of kickstart the process that has not been moving as quickly as I know that you all would like. And there is a process of kind of broader engagement with other stakeholders in the city, including the HR department and the city manager's office, which are key partners in this process. That labor negotiation team is going to be your main point of contact going forward on this. They will be engaging directly with the board. Both the director and the chair did convey to the team the board's request for a closed session as soon as possible. And so I know that they are working on that. And once they are kind of fully up to speed and on board, they will be interfacing with you directly on all of these issues going forward.
Is there any information that you can give us in open session about, because some of us were very impressed by the previous negotiator and quite disappointed by this turn of events. And so is there anything you can share?
I can share that this was not a decision that we had any input in. This was above our heads. And, as Tim didn't just represent us, although it felt like that at times, he had to answer to higher powers as well. So, yeah, we have learned that they weren't happy with the work product, And so this is our pivot.
And just pick up where they talk.
We definitely wanted that to be the beginning of our conversation, and that we didn't want to start all over within this process. And everybody take a deep breath. That's a lot.
I was a separate topic.
Yes, please.
Director, I know we've had some email correspondence about with the PAB annual report, and how to, within the confines of the Brown Act, being able to sort of review, edit. So just so we get a few more turns on it before the meeting. So if there are folks so any guidance from the city attorney or the city manager's office or from you on how, I just want to make sure, I know Leah had a lot of suggestions last time. I think we all have some input and ideas, and I just want to make that as effective as possible so we don't feel rushed for time and want to give you the most opportunity to get our feedback. So just, again, turn it back to you in terms of how you see that process and if there's a way of doing some of that between meetings.
Deputy City Attorney Chang, I did share the information you provided to us. Are you able to just speak more a little bit about that process and the charter requirements on the CAO review and how to navigate that, get feedback simultaneously or in order to get us to violate anything?
Sorry, I didn't catch the end of of what you said there, the last few words or the last sentence or so.
So just making sure that we're doing the proper review within the confines of the Brown Act and what the charter requires and expects out of this process.
So we received from your office this afternoon, I guess, a portion of the report, and we will be prioritizing a review of that. You had asked us also about the review process generally for members, and we did point out, I think you're familiar with the concept of serial meetings under the Brown Act. And so if board members are providing you with input, you can't then kind of pass on that same information to other board members. But you can, receive input from all the board members at the same time and then tee it up in one document for the next meeting. Alternatively, the board can set up a working group that is less than a quorum of the board that is tasked with working on the report. Those are some of the options that you have under the Brown Act.
Subcommittee. Yeah, that's how we get this done. Normally, it'd be a subcommittee. And that's how we navigate the Brown Act.
I know you're on a tight timeline to meet the schedule, get it to council in time to make the agenda and all that stuff. So I'm just cognizant of the timeline and want to also make sure that folks have got input, they can get it to you. Okay.
And I did reach out to the mayor's office and ask if there was, and it'd be appropriate for us to potentially agendize this as a special meeting, and if there is potential interest in that, so we just need to coordinate, and that is less stringent in terms of the requirements getting it to them. We just need a 24-hour notice, and we just need to coordinate closely.
Okay. So I guess for the time being, once you get the review back from the city attorney's office, you'll share the draft with us. Is that right? Via email before the next meeting? Is that the plan?
Yes.
So we can read it.
Right.
And if we had edits or something individually, we could share that with you. Again, we're not gonna share that with the full board, but we could say, hey, here's our, and then you could incorporate whatever you choose or choose not to.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you how long the current draft?
I have taken the feedback that from the last, and we actually did some research on this, and it certainly struggled with the length because is at this point a 3-year. So, and we looked at other models around the country, within the 50 range mark, that was kind of the sweet spot, 50 pages. So we're trying to stay within there. So it might, and we're looking at what we don't need to have in the report proper based on the feedback that you provided last time. So certainly under 100 pages, I can tell you that. But between right now between 50 and 65. That's the range.
And does it have an executive summary?
Yes.
Are there any other questions for the director or ODPA staff?
I have two, just administrative things. One is you just send out to everyone I know we can Google it, which I did, but the regular Department report, did your office send it out to us?
Yes, with the, regular meeting.
Okay, it was included. Thank you. The other thing is, there's also requests from a subcommittee figuring out how to collaboratively make, red line edits to documents. I don't know if you have a preferred method, but if you could maybe make a recommendation to that space, that'd be helpful. So for our subcommittee reviews, that's, unless you would, that's just like a general recommendation, because I want it to be standardized across all subcommittees. If there's a way for us to, we can't use Google Drive because of privacy stuff. So usually I would edit a Google Doc and share it with people, but I want to know what to do in this situation.
Sure. And we can explore that, but again, those are some of the benefits of being within the city system, because you'll have access to some of those tools. There is a comparable tool within that you can share a Microsoft Word document like Google Docs, and you can work on it as well and redline it. So we can do that. For now, what has been the model? When there are red line edits, they just submit it to our office and then we incorporate them.
That's been the practice up to this point. And we're aware of the request that was made earlier. And we are looking into the best way that, again, incorporating those tools and figuring out what the most efficient process for that would be.
Okay, great, thank you.
Not seeing or hearing any other questions, I'm gonna keep moving forward. And I'm gonna ask,
Sorry,
okay,
I just wanted to ask, how many members of the board are not in the system at this point, are not in the Berkeley system?
For the even system.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Right, I think to your point that the OneDrive and the central repository for documents being the Berkeley system is likely the only way that we'll pull this off. So maybe we can prioritize helping folks get into that, get access to that drive.
great. I think we can manage that. You guys have been on forever, I know. We'll do it. And we can make that a priority, board members. Let's see if we can get that done. And this brings us to the second end of agenda, item number 7. You've heard my report. That's what I had to share with you guys. That is the most important right now is our status with regulations and where the city is within the process, where we are within most of the systemic understandings of the city and our role. So not much else I can say in open session, but I look forward to being able to talk in more detail later, maybe our next meeting. That being said, is there any other board members who have anything that they would like to say at this time? Because now is that time. Please.
Since I'm not technically a subcommittee, so I can't speak on early warning systems under that agenda item. I was hoping to give a little summary for the board now. I met with Arlo, who is the point person in the department, and I hope everyone here was able to take a look at the RFP. So if you have any questions about that, you can ask me, and hopefully I can answer them because I asked him about it as well. I think there was confusion. I was confused, honestly, last time as well about the process and the timeline. And following my conversation with Carlo, it seems that the consultant will do a lot of the work that is necessary before we're able to give input into the process, before we change anything, because they're going to be the ones to evaluate the effectiveness of the current early warning system. They're also going to be the ones to evaluate the factors or provide recommendations on the factors to input, provide recommendations on the sort of data infrastructure that's needed, et cetera. So we can hold in the background and you can come to me with any specific concerns because we have interviews scheduled for the first week in April with these, I forget what they're called, not clients, vendors. And I will be sitting in on those, thanks to the department for inviting us, the board into those. And Arlo, when he was talking with me, my main thing was timeline. What we were concerned about having a 2-year timeline to implement these. And he sort of threw out, he thinks it would be 6 months, but honestly, like that's going to be wrong. The vendors. And so I'll be able to report more on that after I talk to them, what the feasible timeline is for them. But I'm aiming for the end of this year, calendar year, to have their official formal recommendation. And in the meantime, you know, Arlo is the one who is the point person on actually developing the system as well. And so there's things that he can do even as they're to create the capability for them to host the data that they were going to recommend that we input. And I actually highlighted in this RFP that one of the things that the early intervention system should incorporate is body-worn camera footage. And, you know, there's a question of like how that's going to be reviewed, whether we manually review it or if there's a system that can review it and provide sort of looks into it that require less work hours from supervisors, but are able to automate it. And we had an interesting conversation with a company that was doing sort of like artificial intelligence reviews of body camera footage and using that to track patterns and whatnot. And I thought that would be an interesting overlap with early warning system. There's overlap with what I'm working with off-duty conduct and ways that we can incorporate not only on the job metrics into early warning system, but off-duty, because that, as I mentioned in my previous subcommittee reports, is also covered by the policies, and there are certain affirmative duties placed on sworn officers to report conduct like that. So I think there's a lot of things that come together in the system. So if you guys have thoughts that you want me to ask at these interviews, I would love to hear them. And if you have any questions about the RFP, I'd also love to hear them.
I have a question, but that was because I had noticed that body worn camera footage was one of the data pieces they were going to be considering. And I wasn't clear how our meeting with the company that uses AI, how that then interrelates with this, or is it one or the other, or are they complementary? And because that was something that our committee wanted some auditing.
I don't think it's one or the other. I think that they're separate right now. I don't think when I talked to, what was the person's name?
Colson.
Lieutenant.
Captain Bolt, Chris Bolt.
Captain Bolton.
Yeah.
I don't know what their capability is to integrate their technology with what the Berkeley, what BPD is building. And that would be like the question. And, you know, so I don't know how much overlap there can actually be. I think there's just an open question of how are we going to review body camera footage within the system? Is it going to be just a manual look by a supervisor, which is currently what it is right now, or is there going to be a more data-driven approach? And that's where I saw that coming into play, but I have no idea if that's even technically feasible from their perspective, or if they even want it to be like the data would be portable with the current system that they're building. So there's a lot of like technical questions that I don't have the answer to.
And I'm just wondering, because that was something that we cared about, and the department's response was, oh, we're dealing with that and it'll happen with this RFP. And so I'm not sure if the recommendations from the subcommittee of me now should be just focus on the other few issues, or should still incorporate that. So that's why I was kind of struggling with that, because it wasn't clear to me where that was or if it's right. Even,
I think that the EWS is just one component of what the body camera subcommittee is doing. I see it as one component where, you know, it's relevant to review that, but there's other systems in place where it would be relevant as well. So I don't, but if you have more thoughts on how it should be incorporated, then yeah, definitely let me know.
Question about the RFP. So as I read this, is RFP for the design and kind of planning, and then is Arlo building it, or is a separate vendor actually building it?
So Arlo is building it.
Okay, great.
That's why at the end it says they want to leverage Berkeley PD's current analytical tools, which are the ones that Arlo has built.
So they'll get the report that says, here's what we recommend, here's the plan, yeah, and then he will then go implement.
Yeah, a lot of what they're gonna recommend, this is interesting, and another thing that I didn't really catch when I was reading this the first time, but after talking to Arlo, it's clear is that they're gonna recommend sort of like the factors that I was concerned with. You know, which brings up some interesting questions for the board. And so we will, I think, be interested in what they produce and how our input into that as well.
Sounds good.
When you say they, you mean the consultant.
The vendor, yeah, the consultant vendor, sure.
Any other questions on this topic? Anybody? No? You good? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, Board Member Gaetano, great work. Which takes us to agenda item number 8, unless there's anybody else who wants to speak about anything, board member? No, we're good? Okay. So agenda item number 8, Chief of Police report.
Mr. Chair, I neglected to recognize Sergeant Edwards. I'm not sure if he's the department's representative tonight. We have a representative on the Cabinet Department.
Yeah, so Donovan Edwards, Sergeant at the Berkeley Police Department. So currently right now, most of our command staff is participating in a team building workshop. The goal of this team building workshop is to focus on problem solving related to staffing reorganization made necessary to incorporate the new deputy chief of police position. And thus Lieutenant Montgomery is typically here filling in the chief, or our current Captain Tate will fill in for the chief's message, but thus I am here today to provide the chief's message. So with that, 3 cases to highlight, if we can proceed.
Of course.
All right. So the first case, so on March 4th, 2024, around 12:30 in the afternoon, our Berkeley Police Fire Department, our partners, responded to a residential building fire alarm activation in the 2600 block of Benvenue. As our fire department was arriving on scene, there was a witness parked basically in front of the location that was, set on fire or that was smoking. This witness took a photo of a person that was leaving the scene. Our officers later arrived on scene and was able to obtain some residential surveillance video that captured that same person leaving the location where the fire took place. Officers reviewing the witness photo and also reviewing the surveillance photo was able to identify the individual connected onto the residential fire that took place. A couple of days later, our Berkeley Police Department officers located that individual and they were able to place him under arrest for arson and other charges. So that's case number 1. And case number 2, which is another case that originated on March 5th. Around that time, March 5th, 2024, around 1:45 p.m., there was a road rage incident that took place in the area of MLK Junior Way and Woolsey Street in the city of Berkeley. In that incident, there was a report of gunfire where a bullet struck the victim's license plate and penetrated the trunk area of the victim's vehicle. As that incident was unfolded, we had one of our community members who witnessed the incident and took video of the incident as it was occurring, capturing the suspect, and also the suspect subsequently shooting the victim's vehicle. With that video and other evidence obtained on scene, our detectives within our Berkeley Police Department felony homicide assault division was able to identify a suspect, and they were able to locate that suspect a couple of days later, arresting him for the assault with a deadly weapon to a firearm and also a possession violation. So that's the second case of interest. And the last case of interest that I'm talking about was on March 7, 2024. One of our graveyard officers was hosting a potential Berkeley Police Department officer as a ride-along candidate. And while on duty in our Berkeley Marina area, the Berkeley Police Department officer spotted a vehicle with a fictitious license plate and conducted a vehicle stop. Through that officer's investigation, they were able to identify a driver of that vehicle, which was a female in her 40s. Later discovered that she was in possession of a concealed firearm and a quantity of suspected methamphetamine and suspected cocaine, which was packaged for sale. So that lady was arrested for subsequent gun charges and drug charges. And those are the two cases that I have to highlight from the chain.
Excellent. So usually we open this up for questions that if you're comfortable, you're ready for this here. We're gonna be, all right. Board members, is there any questions you'd like to ask? Sergeant, please.
I have a question. I don't know if you know any of the answer to this, but maybe you can communicate it. Sure. Last meeting, I mentioned that when we were reviewing the equipment usage report, I believe it's the equipment, the military equipment report. Control equipment report. I noticed just like by anecdotally that the instances where there was controlled equipment use that it corresponded with the mental health like issue or call for service. And I was reading the report just now and I noticed that the department sort of highlighted that there's an increasing trend in mental health calls for service. And so I'm curious if the department like has any strategy or plan for how to like mitigate or address that sort of rising trend in mental health calls for services, especially because it seems correlated with the rising military equipment usage as well, or these controlled equipment usage. So I saw a correlation there. I'm curious if the department has like any sort of thought about how they're addressing this, like what plans they have to address it for the next year or this year, I guess. I know you might not have to answer this, but I'd like a response to the next meeting if you don't have.
Yeah, it's definitely something I can pass it on to Lieutenant Montgomery and the chief to see if they can get a proper response for you.
Perfect.
Track what you've been asked.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
Very quickly, you said the officer saw a fictitious license plate. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that, it was a fake license plate. So
And determined by,
that's determined by what I know, that's my knowledge is record check. So inside of our vehicles, we have computers that's hooked into CLETs and the DMV databases. DMV databases, they give us a little bit of insight where we can run a license plate and see whether it's valid or not valid. Also check with our dispatchers who have access to those same systems. And when I say fictitious, I mean that, as you see now, the California Department of Motor Vehicles are issuing paper plates. So in some instances, it's not too hard to go
Fake prints.
say, go to Microsoft Word or some sort of Google platform and create your own license plate, which may not, fully conform to California standards because the information put on a piece of paper is not in a DMV or a law enforcement system. Does that answer your question?
yeah, thank you.
All right.
Director,
Just a follow-up to that, because I was interested on that too. Would the automated license plate readers, if that was something they would have caught, or it was just more a careful eye of the officer looked off, he ran in?
So I really don't know for sure. I know the knowledge that I know of automated license plate readers, I know they would capture the license plate. I'm not sure if they would capture the law enforcement or the DMV return saying that, hey, this plate is associated with something, but it's not associated with anything, unless there was something else attached to that. So, not sure of that.
And the other unrelated question, and I didn't see any readily available records, but I just wanted to follow up the dates for that part of it. It was my understanding that at one point the BPD was Korea. Do you know anything about that? If you could give any insights as to what that might be to. Yeah, anticipating betterment.
So definitely the Kalia aspect does predate my movement status with this department, Kalia, John, familiar with that organization. Us being the police department being accredited for what happened. Says, well, so, you know, it was talks in 2015, and why did that materialize as the thing? So that's something I can definitely check and keep up.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, not seeing any, I appreciate your time, energy, and effort. You did a great job answering our inquiries. Thank you very much. Before we get to agenda item number 9, can I take a 3-minute bio break? Blow my nose, have an allergic reaction. Everyone wants to get up and stretch.
Yeah.
What? Appreciate it.
Yeah.
In session, which brings us to agenda item number 9, subcommittee reports. I'll hand it over to you if you want to go through the roll call. Subcommittees. No pressure.
Page. The usual page on this. Okay, regulation subcommittee. Your thoughts? Urban Park policing.
Well, we're, in the process of trying to get a committee meeting scheduled and, hopefully have a representative from the department there. And if we can get one scheduled, I'd really like to bring a draft to you all at the next meeting. And there may still be a bit of works and charts and things that still have to be constructed, but the bulk of it is done. And it could benefit from seeing it, and so we can get this show you the road. Yeah, especially given that the department presented to council last night, but some summary of the implementation of FD. So we're going to get this out maybe as soon as the next meeting.
Okay, surveillance technology. Okay, downtown task force. Body worn camera policy.
I've still been waiting to hear back from the department with their revisions to the policy, and I had offered to do that editing work myself. So I'm gonna follow up again, and I think I'll reach out to Captain Tate just to express my frustration, because now it's been almost a year that we've been working on this, and it's really time to just get something done, whether that means coming to the board with recommendations and going to city council. You know, I'm not sure, but it's been unreasonably slow.
Conflict of interest.
Nothing to report.
Okay, the policy subcommittee, formerly the Lexipol.
So we met on Monday. And we have decided to focus on the vehicle pursuits policy because it's one of the few policies that has not yet been converted from a general order to Lexipol. So we took a look at the general order and compared it to the template of the Lexipol policy, which says Berkeley on it and says draft. But it's unclear if there was much effort into a conversion or if they just kind of put Berkeley, you know, in place of the jurisdiction. But it was clear to us that there's significant differences between the general order and the generic Lexipol policy, and as in the past, a lot was lost in translation. And that there were some things that are okay in Lexipol policy, but a lot of good things that were lost, such as providing clear guidance to officers about when they can initiate or terminate a pursuit. So I wrote to Captain Tate because she's been designated as our point person, asking her what the timeline is for their review or their process, because this is going to be a lot of work, and I'm hoping that there's no urgency on their part, because I think we're going to have a lot of input. I also asked her to clarify the extent of work that's already been done in the conversion, if somebody actually looked at it and decided that this draft policy is what Berkeley wants, or if they, basically just put Berkeley on it. And then also asked her about a process for collaboration with the department. And this is something we had discussed at the retreat, that we would like to have some clear process because collaboration is essential. And we haven't been having that. We also haven't done a lot of policy reviews, but I know resources are tight at the department. But in order for us to be effective and efficient, we need to have their participation. So I just asked Captain Tate if we could discuss, how that would look on their end and our end, and if we could institutionalize it. So it's not every single time we're looking at a policy, we say, oh, could you please, we'd love to have somebody participate. And again, that's something we discussed at the retreat.
Budget and metrics?
Quick update, we have a follow-up meeting with the chief, with Captain Tate, Deputy City Manager Cardwell, and Finance Director Sharon Friedrichsen, scheduled for Wednesday, the 20th. We sent Chief and the team a list of questions that we had around the budget. They pledged to come back to us with data at that meeting. And so as soon as we get those responses, we'll share it with the board. Maybe we'll may agendize something, because we basically have to start thinking about what we want to put in our report that will accompany the presentation of the budget to the city council.
And what's the timeline on that?
May, kind of June time when that. So I'll refresh myself on the series of dates, but it's they're still in the development process. Nothing has been formally submitted yet. So we're seeing it kind of in earlier stages as they're pulling it together. So anyway, we just asked for a little more information to clarify some of the strategic priorities the chief has and how that's being reflected in the budget. So as we get the information, I'll share back where so y'all can see what we reflected.
Great. Okay. Outreach and engagement.
Formal accommodations, expanded charter. So Chip and I will set some time to meet in the next week or two to take on our new responsibility, which is accommodations, but also thinking about the outreach and community engagement function and how to do a better job kind of telling our story and engaging the community. So TBD, but work to do.
Okay, off-duty conduct.
Can't remember if I reported at the last meeting that I had my meeting with Lieutenant House, or that I was going to have my meeting with Lieutenant House. But either way, I did have my meeting, and the chair was there, stepped in for former board member Harris. I think we need another person on the subcommittee. Is that right? We can't just have one person on it.
Right.
So it's open. It's open. I think that it's a really tricky issue. And what my conversation with, you can speak to it too if you'd like, but my conversation with Lieutenant House just showed how I gave a long report. Remember 4 months ago, 2 weeks into when I started, and nothing has changed from that report to the few conversations that I've had with him since then. So I'm trying to figure out a way to be productive and not prolong something that doesn't need to be prolonged. So my next meeting with him won't be until, he's going on vacation, so it won't be till mid-April. So at that point, I'll have either tangible things that we can walk away with, or we're gonna end the subcommittee, and I'm just gonna report back to y'all why we ended it.
Was I can't remember because it's been a while. Was your initial take that the policy needed to be strengthened, or that the policy was okay, but maybe it wasn't being enforced? Or what was your initial take, if you can just remind us?
Yeah, there's I guess 3 steps, 3 takes. One is that the policy is very general and vague, and purposely so, because it's hard to cover what is in off-duty conducts. And the second is that because it's general, that it's hard to really nail down when to report and what is actually a violation of the policy in the first place, because theoretically anything could be a violation. I just let me say conduct unbecoming an officer, like that, or disrespectful. There's just a lot of conduct that can happen in the neighborhood when an officer is off duty, when they're just in plain clothes, when they're going to the grocery store, and all of that relies on self-reporting. And so it's really hard to nail down when the department would find sworn officers' conduct to be a violation of their policy, even though they have these like very general standards. And the third part was this sort of like disciplinary mechanism here. It's under disciplined because it's seen as like less egregious, except when it's criminal. And so the conversations that I've been having seem to sort of affirm my hypothesis that unless it's criminal, it won't be considered to be misconduct.
But what triggered this initially, if I'm remembering, was some pretty outrageous conduct in Antioch.
Right.
Right? And I don't remember if it was criminal, but it certainly would violate the policy as far as, right?
As I
And,
understand it, it's a lawsuit. It's being litigated.
oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I was told that anything that's criminal is definitely misconduct. Now, when there's like, you know, what does that say? I mean, like, what's this, that says, there's like one line there. I was asking and pushing for examples where what is not criminal conduct that's still in violation of policy. And, you know, it's really hard to define that based on what the policies say. Even coming up with hypotheticals, it's just like caveats and caveats.
and there aren't good policies out there, or maybe you didn't get that far to see if there's language elsewhere.
So my next step is to come to, like, we established, I think, a common understanding of it's how hard it is to write a policy that governs off-duty conduct, because it covers almost everything. It could cover almost everything. And so I'm going to come back with specific examples that might be better. And then that's the first part I'm going to do. The second part I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with items that could be incorporated into an early warning system, because that's also part of the components of the policy. I mean, this is where I see the integration there. So I hope that those two things together will generate some traction. But if those things don't, then I'm not sure where I'll head.
I guess I don't understand. It seems to me, I mean, I understand that it would be hard to write a policy that's so specific that it would capture. You don't want to over capture but so the criminal is one extreme. Criminal misconduct is one extreme. But you can think of it seems to me that there's other examples of clear misconduct. You could use that example, the Antioch example, and you could say, okay, short of X, Y, and Z, there was still obvious misconduct, you know, without going into all the details, but so it seems to me that the edges are, you know, criminal it's obvious, and but you don't want to just have it be that you're rude to somebody, you know, slightly rude. But there are examples of, I mean, I can think of examples of clear misconduct that, so I studied that same policy because of the downtown task force report. And, you know, what you say about the policy being vague, and it's difficult to make it more specific, although we will try for that, applies to all policy, right? Not just off duty. I mean, that's the same with on duty conduct too, right?
Yeah, I think the distinction is when you're on duty, you have duties. And the question is, what duties do you have when you're off duty besides general, like, to be a good upstanding citizen?
Right.
And so, like, you don't want off-duty conduct to become a morality code, so to speak, but.
No, but you kind of know it when you see it. It's.
I know,
Right?
That was the problem.
That's the
You know, when you see it, but the language within it's vague, it's overbroad, it's ambiguous.
Right.
So when you have that recipe, there's so many caveats. We tried to nail down examples where we're like, okay, this isn't criminal, but this has to be off-duty behavior that is not in line with a police officer in Berkeley, right? Well, there was caveat after caveat to every one of these examples, and we said, okay, well, maybe in this off-duty situation, this doesn't apply. And a lot of this is self-reporting because they are off-duty. So there,
Can't count, I mean, that's. I would think if it's bad enough, somebody else is gonna bring it.
If they're witnesses, I mean, a witness can bring a complaint, right? But there's also off-duty, off-duty conduct is also cited in many other of the policies.
Yeah.
Right? It sometimes says whether on or off duty.
Yeah. Can I just read one before you go to him? Can I go? So like, just to put substance to this conversation. It says like any act on or off duty that brings discredit to this department is a violation. So what does it mean to bring discredit? I mean, like, that's a very difficult standard. Another one is, any criminal, dishonest, or disgraceful. I mean, like, what is disgrace in the situation? It's a very difficult standard to have to apply, to maintain, and to ask officers to, which they do have right now, an affirmative duty to report instances of that. So that's sort of the sticking point.
board member Moses.
I wondered, given that the chief has pushed a lot of the the standards of I forget the term that she's used, but she's referenced trying to integrate this this you know the values and the mission statement of the police department into a lot more of what they do and the training, etc. It seems like that might be one area that there's opportunity to integrate the more clarity around what disgraceful means by referencing the values and mission statement that the chief has sort of voiced her interest in being a touchstone for the department as a whole. And my other thought was whether there might be some specific areas, and I don't know what the legal capability of something like this is, but specific areas that would clearly be considered off limits. So, an example that comes to mind is attending a political or posting political opinions on Facebook. I assume that there's some free speech issues that are there, but along those lines, is there specific types of conduct outside of criminal conduct that the department would be able to highlight? Doing donuts in a parking lot. I don't know. Right? Like are there some of those kinds of examples that could at least start that conversation?
Or actually, I'm very interested in this subject, so even though I'm already overextended, I'll be on your subcommittee. Maybe you could be on my body worn camera subcommittee.
Sure.
That's right.
Sure.
But what comes to my mind, and based on what Board Member Moses was just saying, how about flying a Nazi flag in your front yard? I mean, that's protected by the First Amendment, but doesn't that bring disrespect onto the, I mean, I think we could come up with some creative example.
I do too, but it depends on a witness coming forward for a report from some other officer in the department. Nobody's gonna saw a report on something like this, but it could be a witness or another officer. And if it's a witness, they would bring a complaint, just like any violation, any potential violation of policy, and then we would have to discuss, just like the allegation of discourtesy. What's discourtesy? Well, we have to hammer it out in our hearings, right? So,
or maybe they don't bring it to us, but they bring it to the chief, just
through the internal affairs.
Yeah.
The most likely cases where this comes up is when an off-duty officer who wouldn't be known to be an officer to the public then asserts their authority or brings attention to their status as a member of the department while they're doing something that would be not criminal, but still, just in a threatening way. And that's when someone would know, to report it to the chief, to us.
But if it's your neighbor and they're flying that Nazi flag, you probably would know your neighbor's a cop.
That is true too. I mean, like, we talked about neighborly disputes in our sub and things like this. It's hard, you can get into all these. So it's what, I mean, I'm happy to have you on the page. The chair will know full point. And we can get into these, and maybe we can move to more substantive recommendations. I think having this sort of like multi-factor, sort of like identifying factors would be helpful, and using the values, but.
Sergeant, not to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts about? Duty?
Say Lieutenant Rittenhouse is a great resource within our department, definitely one of the best part of taking the ball.
Smart. No, he's been really helpful, it's engaging, and I'm glad that he's working with us. I think it's, I'm really hopeful that there's something that, I don't want to waste any time, especially you guys.
Speaking up, ladies and gentlemen, where are we on?
So we have two.
All right.
One was the strategic planning retreat, which we have an item dedicated for, unless there's any comments.
Okay.
And then the following one was created during the retreat, but members were formally assigned, which was the operations and processes subcommittee. If that's something that the board would like to do now.
I think Board Member Moses is, wants to be on that subcommittee, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
And, Vice Chair Wilson as well?
Yeah, I think so.
What I heard? Okay.
So she's not here, so.
Going to abstention.
Right. Yeah, and we did actually have a conversation this week to try to make sure that we captured some of the points from the strategic retreat. And if anybody's interested, we can share some of the priorities that that we're going to focus on going forward. But I think the conversation we had earlier about sharing documentation and access to the drive is sort of an example of some of the work that we expect to be doing.
Excellent.
For the sake of, should we eliminate the planning retreat subcommittee at this point? I mean, just for whatever.
Sure, could I just
You sure?
take that as a motion?
That is the motion. Can I get a second on that? All right. That went down easy. So that takes us to agenda item 10, new business. 2024 PAB strategic planning session recap, next steps.
Just, I would say, we provided the minutes, try to be, as accurate as we could. We also provided a memo, highlighting some of the key points. And I think, although you just expanded the retreat, subcommittee, I think we all acknowledge that it might be good to start this process early, so.
Yes.
You might want to think about the 2025, stuff with the retreat, but.
Love it.
One of the things that we took a lot of feedback, so from our office perspective, we're in the process of implementing. In the new restructuring and or the delegation of duties, I think was really helpful from our office, but we're happy to have a more full discussion about that experience and any way we can continue to go.
I thought it was great, but I don't think we need to discuss it, please.
I would say I just want to thank Board Member Leftwich, Board Member Moses with the director and the team for organizing a great retreat. It was really useful.
Yes.
You got great details, so thank you guys.
Great. I love hearing that. Board Member Cayetano.
I would like, I think I mentioned this, I still would like us to email the department, the chief, about our purpose in establishing that subcommittee, the policy subcommittee, and tie it to that language in the charter / ordinance, I forgot what it was, about newly adopted policies, so that she knows. And I don't know if we decided.
That was on my list,
Right. Oh, go for it.
my to-do list. And the idea was to ask the chief to, when new policies, ideally before they're implemented, but at a minimum.
I know you asked that before.
Yeah, but to notify the board, the entire board, yeah, and not just the director's office. I think that's what I agreed to do, right? If there's something else that or that was it.
In a sense now that there is a designated place where there may not have been before, there's a designated place, here's where it goes, you know. To the extent that if that was at all a barrier to not knowing, where do I submit a new policy? Here it is, this subcommittee is reviewing public policies.
It's not so much send it to the subcommittee, at least I don't think it should, I think it should go to the whole board, but, FYI, we have the new whatever
I don't think
policy.
they have that.
And then we can decide if maybe we wanna have the policy committee review it, or if it, or whatever, but at least we all know, we're not, it isn't just in the directors.
I think,
And not necessarily cite the charter language, because the chief had already agreed that she would provide us with those things before implementation.
They have, according to the charter, it's 45 days, after 30 days after implementation. So, yeah, let's see if we can revisit that with the chief and start that conversation again.
And I think the specific thing that we're able to say regarding the policy committee is not necessarily that that's the starting point for her to send new policies, but that's going to be the primary method that's going to be where we collaborate, right? That ongoing communication will be through this centralized policy committee. Does that make sense?
yep,
That being said, is there anything else that we believe the board would like to revisit about the retreat? Anything else that we'd like to let the public know about? If not, I'm gonna go to business B. Follow-up discussion and next steps regarding the Berkeley Police Department's MOUs with other agencies.
Mr. Chair, we just brought it back up.
Appreciate it.
Express your interest in this, here, still kind of lingering, brought up at the retreat as well, about potential approaches, but if there's just seeking any, guidance, as to where it's interested in, what that's what we can coordinate with the relevant parties and something on.
And I do appreciate that. I'm gonna take the chief out of word that she said she was gonna put those together for us and bring those to our next meeting. Unfortunately, she wasn't here for this meeting. But I'm pretty clear that that's what she told us at the last one, and I look forward to getting all the memos, MOUs with neighboring departments and agencies. Is there anything anyone else would like to add to that? Do we want to create? Okay. And please.
Can I just, were you about to move on?
No, I was gonna say something else. Please go ahead.
It's not, it's off.
Off this topic. Okay. But I'd like to, I was gonna ask the board, do we need to set up a mechanism, if not provided then, or should we just wait until our next interaction? It's up to you guys, you know where I am on these
I think
things.
we can wait on this one.
I'd say
Okay.
wait.
All right,
I'm happy with it.
fair enough. That would
Can I,
make
can I
the,
ask before we?
oh yeah,
I don't know, can I make a motion to just talk briefly for 2 minutes about the ordinance, the weapons ordinance thing that we are required to do? Is that?
The control equipment?
Yeah,
yeah, sure.
is that a second?
I mean, I can change it, so.
Is it on the agenda? I mean,
Right, it could have been discussed earlier with board member reports. But if the board wants to entertain the question, we could do a motion.
I just want an update on what we're gonna do about it. We're required to review it, and we have something about next. Do we need a motion? I don't know.
Well, I think just to.
So, let's go.
If we follow tree recap.
So is the motion to open the discussion on the retreat again to discuss that?
Well, as part of the retreat recap, because at the retreat, we decided that
Right.
the staff would take the first stab at doing those reviews.
Right.
I think Hansel said we already closed that discussion, so do we need a motion to go back?
So we do need a motion. Give me a motion, somebody.
We're on 10.
I moved to reopen briefly.
Can I get a second?
I say,
Okay, 2 minutes, let's
So
go.
I just want to know, because when we established this thing about your guys' review, initial review, I think it was future review, but now we're on a timeline for this ordinance, and I want to know if you'll be able to review it and even how you're going to review it, or you can tell me if you want to talk about it more, we can talk about it offline, but I just would like to know
So that's helpful, because we have this live, review, did you envision when at the retreat for us to do it for this year or for future years? And, we did suggest some potential approaches, in that memo, it had this, given the time constraints, it might not be feasible to do, some of that, but if there are any particular incidents that you may want to look at, you can ask the department to provide more information.
Can you tell me what the time constraints are? Like, what is the deadline?
So it's when they provide it to you, you have 60 days to agendize it. The practice has been that the department gives you the 60 days and then goes to council with it. There is not specific per se that, when they have to go back to council, it's more so that you have to agendize it and start to review. If, I don't know that, that the department would entertain, additional time for you to review it, we can explore that with the chief. But yeah, right now, we're going under past practice, which has been to give you 60 days.
So I think, last time you did it yourself qualitatively, I think what I would like is for the staff to prepare a report on what you would need in the future access to in order to conduct a review that would fall within the ordinance's language. Because I think that the ordinance had language on what we are supposed to review that included a lot of like qualitative data about making sure that this was the least this is absolutely this is necessary in order to effectuate their purpose. And so there's things that you would need access to in order to make that determination. And so I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think that what I want is a report that says, in order for us to follow this ordinance, we need access to this, and we'll be able to do it next year.
So when does the department have to get it to council? Because we have 60 days to agendize, but we don't, if we agendize it and don't act on it, they have a deadline to council, right?
I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I don't know that, do you know, yeah, I would have to look at that. My reading of the recollection off the top of my head was that they must go to you before they go to council. Once they give it to you, you have 60 days to agendize it. If you don't have any feedback, then they can go on. But I don't know that they, and off the top of my head, I don't know that they had a particular timeline, but the practice was within the 60 days to get your feedback.
Okay.
Okay, everybody clear? Feel good about it? We'll tackle this next meeting. And that will take us now to agenda item number 11, public comment.
Okay, with that said, we'll go to public comment. As we did at the start of this meeting, members of the public will have 3 minutes to provide their comments on anything of the agenda. We'll start with those physically present before moving on for our virtual attendees. With that said, do we have any public comment? Okay, well, I start the clock.
Thank you.
The clock has started.
Kit Sagnor, you were speaking about MOUs, and I've just noticed that a very recent addition to the Lexipol policy manual that's online is a set of MOUs that seem with other jurisdictions that seem to concern mostly with who's in charge and geographical area.
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Okay.
Which one was it?
So you might want to look at
Yeah.
the new Lexipol policy 1400. There's a series of MOUs there. The fact that they're online makes me think that they're now in effect, so I don't know all that, but that's actually something else I wanted to talk to you about. And this is really not on your agenda at all. I went to or attended on Zoom the council meeting last night at which the Berkeley Police Department had presented its annual report with an accountability section. And I've been thinking about this. I didn't speak up there, but I've been thinking over. They say in the preface to the accountability section that performance metrics and tests for bias help ensure our practice don't perpetuate social inequities. This, of course, is a difficult thing about societal inequities. But with that statement in mind, I'm concerned about one of the tests that they invoke, which is comparing the demographics of who officers stop with collision data. And their sentence there says that collision data gives us a representative sample of who is driving in Berkeley. The information is useful because it gives us a baseline of the population that the officers encounter when they make a stop. And they're talking about the at-fault drivers, right? And they run on that, which they go on to say, the close alignment of those demographics would indicate that stops are influenced by driving behavior rather than implicit biases. So there's an unstated assumption here that the demographics of drivers found in fault in collisions are free of those inequities that pervade our society. Therefore, the reason that 21% of the drivers found at fault in collisions in Berkeley are Black must be because the 21% of the drivers found at fault are Black, that they are dangerous drivers, right? That strikes me as a rather large number of a large percentage of dangerous drivers being Black. So I want to ask, and this is, of course, I can't ask the department now, has that assumption been examined and confirmed? There are several points in the process of being found at fault in a collision where societal inequities can be perpetuated. For instance, do these numbers include collisions that resulted in a moderate amount of damage, which drivers might or might not have chosen to notify police, depending on such factors as trust in the other drivers, insurance coverage, other subjective or economic factors? And when the dynamics of the collision are not definitive, how do we know that the apportionment of fault was not influenced by the same factors and or subconscious bias underlying the societal inequities that we're striving to not perpetuate? The department concludes this section by saying there's a close alignment between these two demographic groups. This is a finding we would expect if officers are using race-neutral factors when making a discretionary stop for a moving violation. But unfortunately, without the explicit analysis of bias or neutrality in the collision statistics, this close alignment can't demonstrate that our officers are immune from the same factors that may be affecting that collision data. So it's a difficult thing. I appreciate the efforts that the department is making, but I'm concerned that this is not really going to get us where we want to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go on to our virtual public comment. If there are any members of the public attending virtually that would like to provide public comment, now's your opportunity. Again, if you're attending virtually and you'd like to provide public comment, now is your opportunity. Chair, at this time, I didn't see any hands raised.
With no hands raised, that takes us to agenda item number 12, which is closed session. That's that you can leave the space.
Thank you, Sergeant. Good evening.
Thank you.
For those members of the public attending virtually, you're more than welcome to stay within the webinar. We'll be transitioning to the Zoom room. The recording, audio, video will be stopped.
We are live. Oh, just one. What's the right one?
We are live.
This brings us out of closed session to agenda item number 13, announcement of closed session actions. We review the ODPA findings in case 2023-C1-0018 and accepted recommendations. We have also reviewed updates for other open cases. And with that, I would ask for a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Boom, and thank you everyone for your time this evening.